Welcome to the Coach Juan P podcast. Today we're talking about recovery. There's a lot of misinformation on what works and what doesn't. Today we're talking about cold water immersion, if it works, if it doesn't, binaural beats, what that is, and how you can apply it. And we're also talking about sleep and its effects on performance. Cold water immersion. You've heard of the rest, ice, compression, elevation, RICE, but it's been proven and shown that ice does not help with recovery. It actually slows recovery because what it does is it slows all the processes, the blood flow, and all the chemical and hormonal responses that go on in the localized area, and it doesn't allow for the normal flow and inflammation process to work. Now with cold water immersion, it's a little bit different than putting ice on one spot. This is dipping your whole body in an ice bath or a tub or whatever it may be. Now studies show that cold water immersion actually has no more positive effects than not using cold water immersion. But what's interesting is cold water immersion with breathing techniques have been shown to decrease inflammatory markers. Now we're shifting gears a little bit into binaural beats. What are binaural beats? It's playing theta wave frequency tones in headphones at slightly different frequencies. Now you can find this on iTunes, Apple Play, Spotify, whatever. But what it does is it causes an illusion effect in your brain, and it has been shown to increase parasympathetic activity and increase recovery post-exercise and in chronic pain. Now the last thing we're going over is sleep. One study shows that less than 6 hours of sleep is going to increase your susceptibility to the common cold, whereas above 6 hours of sleep, you'll be at no greater risk. In another study with swimmers at Stanford, they were able to show that increased sleep relates directly to increased performance. In that same study, they were able to tease out that each person can carry roughly about 50 hours of sleep debt. And by decreasing the sleep debt, performance is going to increase and rebound exponentially. That's all I have for you today, but I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.